Well, thanks very much. I just got the feeling for a second I was invited because I look so incredibly young, because I spend so much time probably on cream and anything. Anyways, when we started with that topic, the younger generation, and that's one of the reasons why I really don't like that term personally, and as a journalist or in my new capacity now, is because everybody seems to think young means you have to do it flashy, funky, colorful, and then it'll attract the young folks. I don't believe in that. I think if it's all about good storytelling, and if the story we have to tell and we tell is a good one, then it'll be used or listened to no matter how old you are. And what I'd like to do now is just throw a couple of images and ideas at you, which would hopefully ignite a discussion. And starting here like this. Now, this was our idea to portray the current media world. It's chunky, it's greasy, it has a lot to offer. Many of the things don't go down nicely, I would even say, because the way we see the media world, there are many things in there which we don't like to taste. There's a lot more competition in there. We're not out anymore, the Deutsche Welle or whoever it was, and we were the ones entering a media market, and everybody said, oh, thank you so much for being there and for giving us this lovely information, the content that we only can get from you. All of a sudden, everybody here in this room can go out and compete with us. You can start a podcast because you just don't like my presentation and think, I'm going to beat that guy. So you put the podcast out there, and all of a sudden, you are a broadcaster or a content provider, and people can download it. So this competition is different. At the same time, what we see is, and Susan has touched this, there is no such simple thing as just a user or a consumer, because all these boundaries have blurred. Everybody consuming content can produce content, so the consumer turns into a prosumer. And I'm not saying everybody does this, but you don't need everybody to do it, but a lot more do it. So all of a sudden, these whole role models of what is happening in the media world, they do change. And then you have this lovely veil, and we call it convergence, and then you're not sure whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. But at least it means if everything is available and can be done by everybody, there's a lot of insecurity within Deutsche Welle on what is the right answer to it. The answer is multi-platform, which is this. Deutsche Welle has a multi-platform strategy, which means we try to adapt the content to the platforms we think are the right ones to use. And that's why it is really good that we have the Pope on our side. It's good, not everybody can say that. P-O-P-E. Plan once, publish everywhere. It's not about producing it once. It's about planning it. You have to plan it for the different platforms from the beginning on. That's when you decide whether what does make sense and what doesn't. So with the Pope on our side, nothing can go wrong. And we are in this, as I said, in the big change management process, trying to change everything, the whole workflow, and I'm sure that's happening at The Economist as well. So all these things are happening, and the question is, do we do the right things? And we believe, yes, content is king. Everybody says this, no doubt about that. But efficient delivery is King Kong. So thanks very much for these first ideas. Is there a role for traditional media, which is the core of your question? If it wasn't, I mean, the two of us would have to leave the room and start crying our eyes out. Yes, but only if we change, meaning if we adapt to the rules of the media markets. And that's quite simple to understand, but hard to do. So the role for someone like Deutsche Welle, for an institution like Deutsche Welle, for a media institution, would be to be a trusted guide, for example. But hey, I can only guide you if you come to me and ask me for my opinion, or only if you find me. You know, so if you go to YouTube and Deutsche Welle is not on YouTube, for example, well, it's fine. I can be somewhere else and do wonderful things. I can do my agenda setting. But if no one uses my content, I'm simply irrelevant. So first step must be, you need to reach people and then interact with them. And that can only be done if you are credible. And by credibility, I don't mean you have to have an expert on everything, or to be an expert on everything. But if we blog, I can't just go out and say, well, there's this lovely guy, he's really cool, he never used a blog, he hates the internet, and now we ask him to do a blog for a younger generation. And then he comes out and says, hello, you, I'm cool, and you? You know, this is not working at all. And so, but these are very many steps that we need to take. And to be quite frank here, there are days when we think for some offerings that we have, it might be easier to start from scratches instead of having this huge transformative process on telling everybody who was used to doing something like radio or TV, and then you say, now do it differently. And now all of a sudden you're not a producer, you're more a content producer, so this is not a program, goes out for TV, it's a podcast. Oops. Yeah, so, and you have to understand there's a need behind it, and that's to interact and be ready to receive feedback. I mean, be it Deutsche Welle, be it someone else, all of a sudden feedback, if you're good and successful, there is feedback, which is great. But hey, are we supposed to answer? Are we supposed to get back to someone who has questions to us? Yes, of course, that's the whole point here. So it's a different model. It's not sending something out and telling everybody we have a great technical reach. This is really interacting with people. And you can only do this if you take it seriously. Otherwise, we're dead meat. There is not one size fits all, as I try to point out. If we say multi-platform strategy, that means some platforms can be just ignored for some markets. And I mean, of course, if you go, for example, to certain areas where people are listening to FM radio, you need to have an FM radio partner. I mean, we have 4,500 partners worldwide. Many of these are radio stations or TV stations. So it's not, don't get me wrong here, this is not a hype thing. I'm not saying it's cool, it's flashy, it's mobile or whatever, and that's why we do it. If we would do that, we'd be dead. Then we'd be the dinosaur. The question is, you need to find the right platform and combine it with the right content to access people. That's why we started products like Learning by Ear, which is a radio novella, a radio show for the African continent. And we have started it, and a couple of weeks later, we have 200 new partners who say this is exactly what we're looking for. Okay. Later on, we've introduced a mobile service for it because people wanted to access this via mobile phones. So it's a very differentiated approach. That's what makes it so difficult. You can't just say this is the content and you just hammer it out. You know, you have to define it market by market. The point she was making, and if I may answer his question first, very briefly. I mean, the idea of the long tail obviously is that there is a niche market behind which is clearly defined. So, and if you know your users, you do have some advertising to it. It's just a different way of working. And that's the whole question of why does a bookstore around the corner not work anymore? Because you have all the costs stacking all the books and everything. And why has Amazon proved to be a success? That is the long tail story, basically, just selling a couple of books. But I think it would mislead as far as the topic of that panel discussion is concerned to discuss it. I was just using it to illustrate on how tiny markets can be that can be reached, and you couldn't reach them before, you know, with the shortwave radio station, for example. And that, in a way, leads us to the Iran. I mean, of course, I can always say, well, we do have content for the Iran. We always have it because you do shortwave transmissions to the Iran and people listen to it. That's great if they listen to it. That is wonderful. And what we have learned, and we had a team of people working on it. One is sitting over there who was working with the Iranian editors together with the marketing and sales people, and they realized we're doing something wrong here because radio is listened to, and shortwave you can't block it, so it is an access. But the younger people, and the Iran is a very young society, they are not using it anymore, or not as much as their parents did. Mm-hmm. So to access them, especially as the Iranian internet is not that easily blocked compared to, let's say, China. So there are access routes in there, and the blogosphere is a very vital one. It's very vivid. There's happening a lot of things. And so when we started in 2004, the Deutsche Welle Weblog Awards, all of a sudden we realized what was happening, because especially people from the Iran sent their Farsi blogs with the different stories, and we thought, wow, I mean, they're using this so differently, and we hadn't thought about this before. I mean, this is where discussions were happening, which were relevant to them, which had an impact. Whereas we had the feeling we might have some good content, but probably in this case, doing radio was not the right thing to do. So we moved into this and have very good success there, at least a good exchange. And here I agree, to interact with people, to involve them, to engage them, this is what you want to do if you do media. And I don't want to just have this signal out there and tell everybody, I think I'm successful because my technical reach is so-and-so. It's much more than that. Well, let's put it like this. I mean, and that's, I'm not trying to escape from that question. I mean, we do content in 30 different languages, and we've started this whole process a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when we started in 1994, because you made that lovely reference to the BBC, for example, with starting online, the BBC started in 1997. So there were a lot of things when we started, and there was no need to do figures because people were laughing at us anyways. What do you do online? Why do you do this? Mm-hmm. So yes, you're right. You needed figures to prove why are you doing things. The process now is a different one. We take it language by language and start, it's editors plus strategic planners together with the media research people and the marketing and sales people. So basically a group of 5 people sitting together, defining who is the target group that we need to reach, want to reach, what is then the content that we need, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. And then the third question would be, what's the right distribution? So that could be radio, FM radio, or it could be an iPhone application, or different things together. And that has started now almost 3 years ago. So now we get the first feedback back, and yes, we can tell there is things that where we won, and we can clearly say, yeah, we had the right crystal ball. Yeah, whatever we foresaw was okay. It's working the way we wanted. We have tripled. Quadrupled our feedback, for example, or the feedback is positive, or people say, fine, I like this, but the way you present it is boring. So then you have to react to it again. I mean, it's a constant, the times when you just have a product and put it somewhere, that's over. You need to be flexible and adapt to it, but the core needs to be good. And so far, I think the core that we have is good, which is quality. And now we just need to define it language by language, and we're quite satisfied with what we did so far.
Ingrid, in a second, I just like to have sort of one more half question on that. Normally, well, what I know of the internet is, as a content provider, you can easily count the clicks on your site and the downloads if you provide a podcast, but you cannot see who is downloading, you cannot see who is clicking, i.e. you don't have any idea about the age group. So again, let's talk about the age group.
But the same applies to the other media as well. I mean, you have to ask people who is watching TV. You have to ask who's listening to radio. Okay. I wouldn't say that that's a big difference here. So you need to know what people do, and for this you need to have partners. For example, like Intermedia, there are questionnaires. Our media research people, and you need to work with the feedback that you receive. Television is still the most popular media when it comes to absolute figures. I mean, even for the so-called younger generation who are all on the internet and all using their mobile phones, I mean, this is where you see a lot of the quickest developments and changes. You know, where you see the growth is happening quickly, like 200% more than last month and this kind of stuff. But TV is still wherever there is a larger variety of television, it is still number one medium by its usage. So I do believe it's not all about, not everybody wants to interact. Sometimes people feel that it's nice to be on a sofa and just watch it. That might be the case, but at the same time, the way you are raised now, if you use the internet every day as a normal thing to do, you look for something, you're searching. So all of a sudden you're active. And if you apply this to the way that you access media, then the big question is, that the one that you've asked before, is there a role for those who claim to be traditional and important and want to be out there? So if I don't have anything relevant for you, then I cannot compete with anybody here in that room. It's simple as that. And that applies to television as well as to the internet or radio.